even the difficult decisions, you're much better off to approach those head on and, obviously in a tactful way. But you've got to do what's best for the business, and what's best for the business is the people.
This is the Leadership Foundry podcast. I'm your host this week, Brandon Smith, and our guest this week is Chris Pacer. He is a group vice president at Motion Industries. I love my conversation with Chris today, and I loved his journey from technical expert all the way up to group vice president. And within his journey and our conversation, you're going to hear two very big themes, one around people and one around passion. So listen real close how Chris really leverages people and passion to lead effectively. And of course, stay tuned to the very end where I share some of my highlights from the conversation.
Welding together practical insights and powerful conversations to forge world-class leaders. This is the Leadership Foundry podcast.
Chris, I am so excited to have you on the show today. You and I have been kind of talking about this for a while, and I'm just excited for you to share with me, but also for our listeners today, a little about your leadership journey and a couple things that you think are so critical to be an effective leader. So maybe before we go too much further down the path, take a few moments, just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, and would love to hear the journey that really took you to the seat that you're on today.
Gladly. So first of all, Brandon, I just want to say that I'm certainly honored to be with you today. And normally I have to say that I'm on the other side of a podcast, usually listening in my truck with my wife, which tends to be true crime stories. But what makes it a little bit weird for me is that on occasion, I catch her out of the corner of my eye taking notes. So you're the therapist. So I may come back to you at a point later on in life to say, should I be concerned? Yes or no? But,
absolutely.
Yeah. But no, my journey, I feel, is somewhat typical in a way. I started at the University of Toledo. I'll kind of walk through there. I decided I was going to do a 2+2 program, go get my associate's degree, and then go get my bachelor's degree, just to kind of feel things out. Maybe a semester or two in, I went to a job fair, and as you can imagine, my resume was incredible. It was bag boy, produce department, and grill cook. And I met a gentleman that turned out to be the vice president of engineering from a local fluid powerhouse. And I listened to what he had to say. And as I was handing it to him and was listening to the spiel, I was trying to take the resume back because I just couldn't picture myself within that company. I just, was really kind of the unknown. And that kind of launched me. So I went to work for them while I was finishing up school. I got myself certified as a fluid power specialist. I left there and went to a manufacturer that was in the fluid power space. And I did that for a couple of years. I think it was 3 years. And what I learned about that job is that I don't like being in the office from 8 to 5. So that was actually a little bit of a defining moment for me. Like, okay, I need to go maybe in a different direction with my career. I like engineering. I didn't know at the time that I was going to love sales, but that led me to the company that I'm with today with Motion. And I've been there for 25 and a half years now. And as you are well aware, I can be just a tad bit sarcastic on occasion. And I got a phone call late at night, and the gentleman was from Motion and said, "Hey, how's it going, man?" Real animated. And I remember saying, "Great, you got any openings?" And one thing led to another, and I met their regional manager. And it was pretty exciting because my dad worked for a company for 30 plus years. And going into college, I felt like I was probably going to have to change jobs and roles several times in companies, to kind of further my appetite for growth. And man, when I came to this company, I could see a path where there were a lot of options. But so one of the first lessons, if you will, that I learned was there's value in putting some time into each role that you wind up in, and it's beneficial as you move forward, with the company. So I've done everything from I started as a technical support person in the field, and then I had that manager show up out of the clear blue, the same guy that hired me, and said, "Good news, you're going to start as a manager in 2 weeks." And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Yeah, you are." And I said, "No, I really like being technical. I'm not so sure that, I'm a manager material." And he very politely and professionally and jokingly said, "I don't remember asking." And I used to thank him every time I would see him, because it was the best thing that could have happened to me to step outside of my comfort zone. And that launched me into field management for the company. And then later on, I morphed into corporate accounts. So I got to see what the other side is like. And that was very beneficial. And then had the good fortune of running a division, and that was very demanding. That was less strategic and more tactical. But I think my heart was pulling me more towards the strategic side of the business. But I can be very tactical for sure. So learned a lot. And then I wound up in the group vice president role a couple of years ago. And it's just been an amazing journey so far.
Yeah. So I love that journey, Chris. And you and I've had lots of time to kind of chat about your kind of journey and some of the great things that you do with your team. If we go back in time a little bit, so you talked about one of the big lessons you had was this idea of value in putting time in each role. I want you to explore that a little bit more. What does that mean when someone's listening to that? What are some ways they should think about that in whatever role they're in today?
That's a great question. So for me, it was about, you cannot possibly be exposed to every situation or opportunity within a 12-month period, or quite frankly, a 24-month period, and you can be high performing and all those good things. But there is real value in taking your time to kind of learn your craft, to have different situations come up along the way that challenge your thinking, because you have to have a different set of lenses on as you go forward. So I think for me, I felt like there was confidence that grew and came out of having those situations pop up that I had to manage through, that I had never been exposed to in my career at that point, and felt like I was going to be able to rely on that later on. And from a mentor standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, absolutely be able to refer back to that and then utilize it and help your team in the next role, or whatever position you're in.
I love that. I think that's a great way to look at it. It's almost like reminding us that accelerating too quickly can be a bad thing, because deal with a fire here, learn how to solve it. So when you get promoted to something up here and the fires are a lot bigger, you had some experience seeing that. So your journey is one where you kind of start off technical and then moved all the way up into this group VP role. So I know you've got some life lessons for us, but I want to start off by asking you a question.
Sure.
What were some of the biggest challenges in learning how to lead multiple teams or larger groups of people? Because now you've got a pretty big organization. I'm sure that there had to been some growing pains as you went along the way and leading more and more folks.
Sure. The first thing I would say is, when you have multiple teams that you're leading, of course, there are, I'll just say, multiple viewpoints that you come in contact with on every single day. And, you know, the challenge for me there is, okay, I've got to find a way to get everybody on the same page. But everybody's time, treasures, and talent are different. And so I felt like the key for me was to engage with those individuals, go meet the teams, and understand maybe what their roadblocks were or perceived roadblocks were for growth, and maybe what their challenges were. And I really utilized that as kind of my basis to get started. Certainly, it's not easy when you have multiple teams, but the other thing I would say is a much bigger lesson, or the next lesson in leadership that came about was, you know, everybody talks about getting the right person in the right seat on the bus. And sometimes those take difficult decisions. And I remember starting out, I didn't move as quick as I should have. And so I wound up kind of almost going backwards in a way, Brandon. And once I saw the success of, hey, this person might not be the right fit for this particular role, but that doesn't mean that they're not valuable to the company, you know. And I think that's where you have to understand, hey, what are they passionate about? And so then once you start aligning those things, that what feels like a symphony, you know, with all these different parts, all of a sudden, instead of people warming up or on different scores, once you start moving towards getting everybody on the same page, then it becomes much easier to manage. But I would say even the difficult decisions, you're much better off to approach those head on, and, you know, obviously in a tactful way. But you've got to do what's best for the business, and what's best for the business is the people. So, because I think the other thing is other people are looking around and watching you as a leader and saying, hey, are you willing to put up with that? Well, you must not care. And that may not be true, but that's the perceived notion, is that you may not care about ultimately them indirectly.
Well, I think that's a great reminder that, you know, when we stall on decisions, we're not in a vacuum. People are watching us and they're wondering, like, are you gonna handle me the same way? Are you gonna deal with me in the same way?
Right.
And so knowing that we're on stage, and then of course the stage just gets bigger and bigger, audience gets bigger and bigger, and so more and more folks watching. Yeah. So you mentioned something that I definitely want to hone in on, because you said you really want to discover what those people's passions are and then try and align them to the right part of the business. One of the things that I've always admired about you, Chris, is you are such a passionate leader. You really bring that passion. You bring that energy to your teams, and you bring that energy to clients and customers, which I think is awesome. It's contagious. But I would love your point of view around that. Where do you think passion falls in to leadership?
I think it falls in at the very top, to be quite frank about it. You know, I view my job as to align a person's passion with a purpose. Now, purpose could be a role. It could be, you know, what's the initiative, getting the right people together on a team to accomplish the goal. But this is just my perspective. But I think much too often leadership has the right intention of wanting to get the right person in the right seat on the bus, and they think they may know what will help not only them and the company, but you accelerate your professional growth. But in reality, I don't know how many of us are talking directly to that person and saying, hey, what are you passionate about? What motivates you when you get up in the morning? And when you take the time to do that and have those discussions with those folks, then some of those other things fall into place pretty quickly. So, passion to me is the people. So, I'm not, this is going to sound really counterintuitive. I've said this to you before, but, I don't focus and fixate on the numbers. That's not how it works for me. I fixate on the people on the team and working to get the right people in the right spots. And from that, you can build out pretty quickly and you can accelerate things. But your team is much happier when you're engaged with them and you're understanding their point of view versus telling them what you think. I mean, it's okay to have the conversation and say, you know what, I think you would be really good at. I've seen these traits from you over the last year that I think could be helpful. But at the end of the day, if you don't take that one extra step up front and understand where they're coming from and what they're passionate about, you'd be surprised. I think the key certainly is to unlock your hidden talent within the organization, but that's part of how you do it, right?
Yeah.
Let's understand what motivates you. And then let me look at all the pieces to the puzzle and see where that's the best fit. And then the numbers just happen. It's like magic.
Okay, so I want to take this idea then of passion and what you just described and help us think through the complexity of this. So it's really easy when it's one-on-one, right? I just sit down with my individual, team member and I say, let's talk about your passions. But what happens when you've got all these branches and locations and so many people and you can't sit down with everybody, but you still want them to feel that sense of passion about the business and the sense of passion that you care? So I guess the question is, how do you scale passion, Chris?
That's the beauty part about the virtual world. I'm torn about this piece right now because I think the technology is fantastic. Like right now, we're taking advantage of it. I take advantage of it every single day with my teams on virtual calls and meetings. But at the same time, there's no substitute for being face to face. But this piece to the puzzle really helps scale things out. And the other thing too is when you can put people together to help solve problems in sub teams, you start building that network out. And to me, that word starts getting around to your entire squad that you're leading. And so it doesn't happen overnight. It's not one team's call. I've driven many miles and certainly flown many miles, but taking the time to truly understand just simple things about a person's life, outside of work. Sometimes they can point you in a direction. So scaling it out isn't easy by any means, but I think today's technology kind of helps us get a sense of, hey, who you are as a leader, right? And consistency is probably right up there with taking advantage of the technology.
Yeah. So just my next question is kind of wide open. Any other big leadership lessons, things you've learned along the way that you think have really kind of shaped you as a leader, that have really allowed you to kind of get to the point in your career that you are?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a few things along the way, but the first thing for me has been, you just came out with a book about talking about authoring up and editing down. That one in and of itself is a very big lesson and very helpful from a leadership perspective. I was doing that, but it wasn't as intentional as I probably should have been. But at the end of the day, one of the things I learned early on is, so I'm an engineer, right? Maybe I don't look like one, but I like to solve things. I like to solve problems, and I like to be in control of that. So as a leader, you have to trust. your teams to bring you something to work with and to edit. And that one for me is probably ranks at the very top. Because the other thing I would say is, not everybody is going to do things the way that you might attack it. You might attack a problem. But I think if you're willing to take a step back and truly listen to the input, you're going to hear some things and think about some things that you might have missed along the way trying to solve the problem yourself or for the team. And you don't want to stunt their growth. At the end of the day, you need them to grow right along with you.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the team really strong. So that's up there, along with not being afraid to look at, hey, where are some of the roadblocks that I have right now? Maybe with individual leadership. So I talk to my teams all the time about individual leadership. And then from there, if you can get everybody to understand that they have a part in leadership, you can strengthen the team and do some pretty amazing things without question. So in the end, I think you have to almost kind of follow Simon Sinek had it right when he said, hey, a boss has the title, a leader has the people. But I would add that, performance follows the people. And you have to learn how to become part of the people if you're going to truly lead your squad. You can't do it from a distance. And so you have to be engaged. And I think that direct communication is a big key. And they have to understand that it's an open door policy. And one of the things that I did to try and illustrate that early on in my career was when I was given my assignment out in Northeast Ohio, I knew nobody. And which was good. They didn't know me. So I had a jar of pennies and I walked into my first meeting, had everybody come in, and I started passing the jar around and said, just take two. And it didn't take very long. And then finally, one of the customer service reps raised their hands and said, hey, what's this for? And I said, well, I want your 2 cents. So this is a reminder that we can't move the needle and we can't grow as a company if you're not willing to come talk to me about what you're seeing. Because, you might be flying at a 30,000 foot level or 10,000 foot level, but you still need to be connected to what's going on at the ground level so that you can make good decisions for the business as the leader.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that jar of pennies. That's a brilliant idea. That's a brilliant idea.
It's not very far from me right now on my desk. I keep it as my reminder.
Nice. I think that's fantastic. Well, Chris, we're already getting close on time here. So I ask all my guests on the Leadership Foundry podcast this question: what's one life hack for us on how we can become better leaders starting today? What's one life hack you might have for everyone listening to this?
Well, I wouldn't recommend handing out the Dundies at Chili's. I'll just say that, okay? I would say that really explaining the why to your teams, you have to get their buy-in. And a lot of times, you may know what the outcome is that you're looking for, but if you can just simply explain the why on whatever the initiative is and shed some light on the desired outcome, you can get the buy-in that you need and the accountability that you need to make a difference. And that has been the single biggest success for me as a leader is I focus on, hey, why are we doing this? Not you have to do this. We need to report this every month. Like you get too far down the road. If I can explain it really well and take the time to answer questions, because there's myths out there, hey, I think we're doing this because of whatever reason. No, there's a really good reason, and it's much bigger than you or I, and it's much bigger than the company. So when you can take the time to do that and connect with them in that way, it changes the game as a leader.
Yeah, I love that. While you hadn't mentioned that before, it still fits within the theme of really putting the people first in everything you do as a leader. Chris, fantastic. I knew it would be. Thank you for your time today. If people want to learn more about you, learn about Motion, where can they go?
They can go to motion.com to learn a great deal about our company. And, we are the premier industrial solutions provider, and we would welcome a conversation at any point in time. And if somebody would like to send me an email, please reach out to chris.pacer@motion.com.
Okay. Well, fantastic, my friend. Really, really appreciate your time. Appreciate all your leadership insights. I got a little smarter today. I'm sure our listeners did too. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Thank you very much for having me.
I always enjoy my time with Chris. Chris and I have had lots of conversations over the years, but I particularly want to hone in on a few key points from this conversation that I think we can all take away. First, he says he doesn't focus and fixate on the numbers. He focuses and fixates on the people. That's always been his leadership philosophy. And as we talked about scaling as a leader, one of the things he realized was you start to encounter different points of view and different personalities. And you just got to get curious and learn more about people and their backgrounds and their passions and interests. And then he hones in and says, but I really struggle with that early on, with maybe not making decisions as quickly as I could. So when people aren't in good fits or they aren't performing up to par, have those conversations, find where their passions are, and try and find a home within the business that realigns them to the passion. Because people are watching us. Our teams are watching us to how we handle that situation, thinking that might be how we handle them. So we've got to remind ourselves that we're on stage, and the stage gets bigger and the audience gets bigger. And then finally, he says, the one practical thing that we can all start doing today is really make sure we're communicating the why to our teams, so they know exactly what they need to be doing. And he did a nice little plug for my book, Author versus Editor. I really appreciate that, and being able to trust our folks to author. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. But most importantly, I hope you took away one practical thing you could start doing tomorrow to make you a better leader, not only today, but tomorrow.